Please enjoy our presentation on e-readers and e-books. Our first essential question for our research was, how are e-readers and the use of digital books changing the way students read and learn? Another essential question was, what effect does the shift to e-books have on schools from an administrative perspective? Finally, we wanted to know what the general pros and cons were to reading e-books. Please note that when discussing e-readers, we will be referring to the actual device, such as a Kindle, Nook, or tablet. E-books will be referring to the actual reading material loaded onto this hardware. Other websites that provide e-books might include Tumblebooks, RazKids, and Scholastic Bookflix.
Who is using e-books and e-readers in the classroom? A wide variety of people in the educational setting are using these materials. Librarians are at the forefront of the use of these type of materials in the schools. Librarians have taken ownership and the lead in this area in including these materials in their collections, as well as providing access to them for instructional use. Specialists such as the ELL teacher or the reading specialist have also adopted these materials for the specific needs of their students. Teachers as well are beginning to use these materials in their classroom. One of the primary reasons is that the students find the use of these materials very engaging. Students also are using these materials in and outside of school. This group is one of the early adopters of this type of technology and using it to read for enjoyment as well as instructional purposes. E-books in the changing library. There are many things to consider when considering the purchase of e-books for a school library. The first thing you should consider is the number of e-books that should be included in the collection. Given we still are in a print and e-book environment, you have to consider what amount of your budget should be spent on these types of materials and what specific need they fill in the collection. Also, the intellectual property related to these materials is necessary to consider in terms of licenses. Do you want to have a single license which is similar to a single book, where one user uses it at a time, or invest in multi-licenses which would allow people to access it simultaneously? The multi-license is much more expensive and should be considered with care when making that decision. Also, adding e-readers, the personal devices to access electronic books, is something the librarian should consider, along with the costs of those, and the maintenance is important, and also consider checking those out and having the students have access to them outside of the school day. Deciding what platforms and vendors to use in terms of ebooks is also important to look at when making these decisions, because vendors and platforms offer different features and you have to decide which fits your user base most appropriately. Finally, and the most important consideration, is equitable access. Do all your patrons, all your users of your material, students, staff, have access to ebooks, and how are you going to ensure that in terms of being able to view the materials and being able to check them out and use them in a genuine manner?
With the changes ebooks are creating for today's school libraries, there are issues of which administrators need to be aware. First, decisions need to be made with the help of the librarian as to the type of licenses being purchased and the costs associated with them. Also, decisions need to be made on the issue of libraries purchasing and providing students with e-readers for both classroom and personal use. In addition, how this hardware is supported and replaced will also require an administrator to make key decisions and thoughtful plans. Finally, this is new territory for many schools, and administrators will need to develop school policies around the use of e-readers in and out of the classroom. In our research, we have found many sources that emphasize the power e-readers and e-books bring to the student with special needs. We will first examine our English language learners. Several studies reported that for ELL students, there is great appeal due to the technology component reading e-books provides. This also provides students with a break from a lecture format within the classroom. Studies showed students not only enjoy reading English books on their e-readers, but experience an increase in their English speaking abilities. This helped our ELL students feel successful and want to continue reading their English stories. E-readers and e-books are also very beneficial to our visually impaired students. Unlike traditional books, e-readers allow students to customize their display. Students with a visual impairment are able to increase the font size and change font colors. Some e-readers also provide the option to have the book read aloud. Adding headphones provides students with some privacy and an opportunity to appear to be reading in the same way as their sighted peers. When examining students with ADHD, the e-readers provide both pros and cons. As we saw with the English language learners, e-readers provide a high level of engagement due to the technology component. In addition to changing displays to meet student preferences and needs, many e-readers are including hyperlinks within the text. These hyperlinks allow the student to explore additional information that supports the text. Although this is educationally sound, it can also act as a big distractor to the student with ADHD. Two other features that tend to appeal to this type of learner include having instant access to book titles and an opportunity to make reading a social experience, as many e-readers have added the ability to share quotes from reading in Facebook and Twitter. Finally, we will examine the effects of e-readers and e-books on the struggling or reluctant reader. Many studies have reported an increase in their motivation to read when using an e-reader. Most students expressed it was the interactive features that captured their attention and helped them the most. Features such as modified text, audio, and the addition of video and games appealed to this type of reader. Students in these studies also appreciated having so many choices in reading material, as well as having all of these features in a portable format. Studies, however, were careful to state that e-readers are novel right now, and increasing motivation for the reluctant reader needs to be examined long-term. Our research uncovered two very different teacher perspectives, or schools of thought, when it comes to technology. The first group believes strongly that schools have a responsibility to integrate technology into the curriculum and prepare students for the world ahead. The second group believes strongly that technology is getting in the way of good instruction and true learning. This perspective may not be the popular one and instead be looked down upon for not embracing technology. But the philosophy should stand as a caution to all teachers in that if we focus on the digital literacy skills over content and a broad base of knowledge, we could be doing kids a real disservice. Just as in any lesson, there are things to consider to help strengthen our instructional practice. When it comes to eBooks, they can appear to tap into a variety of learning styles and provide students with a high level of engagement. But we should also be aware that for some, eBooks will not be welcome over print books. They will miss the smell and feel of a book. The cold technology may be difficult for them to snuggle up with and connect to. Being careful not to be swept away by the novelty of e-readers is also a caution. As educators, we need to keep our content rich and connected to students' lives. Now let's explore some of the research and the findings on e-readers and instruction.
eBooks have important implications for instructional practice. A recent study done by researchers in Israel with a group of kindergartners demonstrate how important eBooks may become in instruction. They took 4 groups of kindergartners. One group had an ebook with adult instruction, the second group had a print book with instruction, the third group had just an ebook independently, and the final group was the control group that went through the regular kindergarten curriculum. As a result of the study, the researchers learned that the group with the ebook and the adult instruction did the best with emergent literacy skills, which included concepts about print and word recognition or word reading, as well as phonological awareness. This was a very important study because it demonstrated that not only was an ebook an effective way to instruct, but it also required the adult instruction in conjunction with the use of the ebook. The print book was the second book to do well in the study, and the print book was also coupled with adult instruction. It did well in terms of concept about print and phonological awareness. The ebook with independent use by the students did not do as well, and the regular normal kindergarten also could be improved with the ebook instruction. The study has many implications for how an ebook could be used in any classroom setting. Ebooks and reading interest. A third grade study was performed on a third grade class in the southern part of our country, and it included about 40 third graders who read books on three different occasions. The first book was read electronically, the second book was read using a print copy, and the third book was read using an ebook again. The students had access to a website called Raz Kids, which is a subscription ebook database. The researchers wanted to learn about the preferences of the students for ebooks versus print. As a result of the study, the researchers concluded that the students did not have a preference based on the format of the book, but rather the storyline and the plot were the decisive factors in determining whether or not they found the story and the book engaging. This is important because often we think as students having a preference for an electronic resource, and it reminds us that the content is just as important, or if not more important, than the format. The physical effects of ebooks most often are thought of in terms of eye strain, and experts do believe that there may be more eye strain related to the use of ebooks as well as any other electronic resource. Reading with both types of screens and the backlit and the black and white screen may result in eye strain according to experts. And the reading, of course, needs to be done in moderation. And the strain results from the stress on the brain and the body from doing one thing too long. What differentiates between the two screens is the amount of light, and in bright light, the black and white screens have an advantage while the backlit color screens are better in dark environments. And once you take these two things into account when considering purchasing devices for use in an instructional setting. Also, there's been research that shows that when students are using electronic resources, they may begin to think differently than humans have thought in the past. Some argue that the thinking is shallow compared to the deep thinking that we have traditionally done for hundreds of years. Technology, once it's accepted into a society, begins to change how society does things. And some will argue that the use of the internet and other electronic resources is shaping or creating new neural pathways in our brains, and that impacts how we think. And our thinking becomes more distracted, less deep, and as a society and educators, we need to be aware the way we think is changing and what that means in an educational setting.
There are a few key points to review when considering using e-readers and e-books in your classrooms. Although we can provide students with access to thousands of book titles, it becomes very difficult for students to share books. As you know, this is one of the best ways to be exposed to new titles, authors, and genres. Although this is an exciting time and it feels like books are almost being reinvented, the different feel and packaging may lose some of the author's intent. And although ebooks are green by nature, we must also tolerate the advertising that is present. This may be difficult for young readers to process and dismiss. Although individuals will experience some privacy while reading with an e-reader, a digital dossier will be ever present. Finally, although digital books can take on an online social component, they also require power and maintenance. We hope our presentation has given you some insight into how e-readers are changing how our students are learning. As we prepare to be administrators, we need to be ready for changes in education and have some awareness of the pros and cons of technology. This will be a topic to watch, as more studies will likely show what material is best delivered in a digital format and what subjects might best remain in a traditional print format. Thank you.